Hey guys, welcome once again to the Real World Prepper. I am he, and today we're going to talk about a topic that I'm going to call the Big Divide. As always, if you like the content that you see on this channel, please click that subscribe button and the bell notification so you'll know every time we upload new content. Here we go. Alright guys, thanks for joining today. As a prepper and as someone who lives in the real world, and when I say that, of course what I mean is jobs, lives, families, mortgages, responsibilities, etc. All of those things. You got to consider a lot of things. You've got your daily routine, you've got everything that you've got to do that you're responsible for. But as a prepper, you've also got to include prepping and everything that goes with that. You've got to include that into your routine. I talk about baby steps and that kind of thing. Little things along the way so that it doesn't consume you. I wouldn't encourage you letting anything consume you other than God, frankly. I personally could even be better at letting God consume me. I try and run the show a lot of times when God's plan is certainly always better. Proven that in my life many times. That being said, what I'm talking about specifically today is news and information. What I kind of want to talk about. That's the broad topic, news and information. There's a whole bunch of places for you to get news and information, and if you rely solely on one source over another, you most likely will end up with some kind of bias. Now, most of us will end up with some kind of bias anyway, as most people fall on one side or the other, more or less, even if, all right, if here's the middle line, right, and here's far right and here's far left, we fall somewhere on one side or other of the wall. Here's the wall, and we're falling on one side or the other of whatever that may be. Now, there's been an ongoing effort in this country, in my opinion, and around the world, to stigmatize, to delegitimize, vilify the others. And the others are those who are on the other side of whatever your viewpoint is. Be it, if you believe in God, there's others that do not and would mock you and scoff that you do. If you believe in the Constitution and the carrying out of the Constitution lawfully, execution of the Constitution lawfully in our lives, in our government, there are many others who think that's a problem, because they think it's outdated. It was written so long ago, and, this is modern world and modern times, The Second Amendment, there's a good one. Obviously there's polarization there, one side or the other. Wherever you stand on that, lots of issues, abortion issues, pro-life or pro-choice, and all this kind of stuff. And what has happened in this country, and I think largely due to our news sources and our media, where people glean and get information, and I'm talking across the board now. Across the board. I don't mean just mainstream. I'm not talking about CNN. I'm not calling them out exclusively, although I am calling them out. But I mean everywhere, because again, there is this big divide. People have gotten... I remember when I was a kid, I guess, I'll put it this way, and a young adult even, where there could be polarizing issues and people weren't ready to kill one another over them, and that's maybe that's a stretch to say that. Maybe not in a lot of cases, but there was a time when people were more civil, I guess, about disagreements or different viewpoints on things. So it seems to me that people are more easily buying into the dogma that one party affiliation or opinion affiliation or whatever. You know, this again, this thing I talked about the wall, and you know, whatever your issues are, and you stand on one side or the other. I think that the media of all sorts has done a great job of pushing people further away from that middle ground, at least in being able to accept another person with another viewpoint and their right to having that viewpoint, and you know, I suppose to one degree, you know, they've done a real good job of that. There's the distractions in the news keep us divided. The assertions in the news keep us divided. Again, the vilification of the others, of the other side, keep us divided. And that is growing. You know, there's a racial divide that's been growing. You know, some would argue that, you know, racial relations, for example, have been, you know, way better in this country since certainly the 60s. And others would say it's a whole lot worse, you know, which is right. Which one is correct? I'm not here to comment on which one is correct. I'm here to comment on the fact that they're just using that one as an example, that there's such a divide, that there's such a differing of opinions of how things really are. Okay, so I don't think we really even know how things really are, largely. You know, if you look at nothing but CNN, for example, let's just use them again for an example. If you look at nothing but CNN, then that will be your talking points, and it's likely your viewpoint is a more liberal one and a left-handed one, whereas in opposition, if you look at nothing but Fox News, same thing. You're most likely going to be a right-wing individual, and a very staunch one at that, okay? And this happens on both sides. I mean, even in Christian and non-Christian, let's say that. You know, I know some Christians who, I'm not here to say they're not, but I know some Christians who, you know, are quick to bash non-Christians or people who hold beliefs that certainly aren't supported by Christian values, i.e. Abortion, excuse me, pro-choice, you know, proponents, for example. Just an example, one of many. The picture that is painted by any of these news outlets certainly makes it so that it seems that the other is absolutely insane for having the viewpoint that they have. That does no good for us as people in this country to be a community, to be a country united. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. And I think that's what the point is to divide us for a fall. You know, not everyone falls into this category. Let me say this, not everyone is so polarized. I mean, I personally know some people with differing opinions on things. I mean, vastly differing opinions on things than my own, that certainly seem genuine, that I have genuine friendships with and relationships with, working and personal and otherwise. And I mean that. That's the absolute truth. Now, I will say that me personally, I find that I don't talk that much about these polarizing and differing issues with people who have differing opinions, because, you know, I don't want to get into a fight about it, you know, and that's, I tend to lean more on a conservative side. I'm definitely a pro-life person. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in gun rights. I believe in adhering to the Constitution of the United States. I think this is a fantastic country we live in, for as flawed as it is. So that being said, you know, the people that I'm talking about in my personal life obviously would be people that lean more left, okay? So there's no big secret there. And what I've found, and this may be true for people on the right as it pertains to people on the left, if it was a left person that were telling you this right now versus one that leans more right like myself, they might have the same thing to say, but my experience is that typically if you do engage your friends that you're civil with that have differing opinions, if you do happen to get into those deeper conversations and deeper topics, then the ugliness will come out. And again, that very well may be true. I'm sure it's true for people on the right when it comes to people on the left, and da-da-da-da, same thing. Okay, but in my experience is, it is how I just explained it. You know, the people I know, you know, it's not too many. I mean, I see kind of the same people in my work and daily life and everything that I talk to in depth about things at times, and it does seem to be mostly a genuine friendship and regard for one another. There are a few examples, and there's even some family in-laws that that I deal with that I believe is simply a thin veneer of civility. I believe that behind closed doors, you know, I would be called a kook and a fool and whatever. And that's fine, whatever. Meanwhile, the fact that the othering is going on, the division is going on, and it's being perpetuated by all media outlets, internet and mainstream, you know, everything that you can find. And not every bit of it, okay? I suppose there are some that maybe are true to just laying it down how it goes down and not asserting their opinion into a news piece. And of course we have a lot of guys on YouTube, myself included, you know, that like to share information and you know, I have nobody checking me and I mean, unless you guys do, but what I mean is, you know, I'm not being vetted through a system of people before me that says, all right, here's what you can report on right here, and you got to say it just like this, okay? You know, I get to kind of speak however I want to, and there's a lot of sources like that, a lot of good ones, okay, and a lot of ones that you got to watch out for. A lot of people that will, that will spew vitriol and things, you know. So while we're being distracted, there's bigger stuff going on. I mean, we do see in the news some stuff that we really need to be paying attention to. You know, the nuclear treaty that's, you know, with Russia, for example, that just a few days ago or a couple of days ago that Donald Trump said we're backing out of, you know, which frankly, I think he's right. You know, they have been cheating the whole time, and we've been saying, come on guys, get it together, and he finally said, all right, enough. You know, if you're gonna cheat and keep developing nukes, you know, then we're not in this game anymore. You know, cards are off the table. Sorry for this coughing, by the way. It's a beautiful day. It's been cold, wet, yucky. Today turned out to be a beautiful day, damn near 70 degrees at the peak, and sunshine and everything, and I have been fighting this sinus congestion, cold junk, and it is miserable. I digress. So anyway, but meanwhile, while we're being divided, all right, and we're given things by, let's at least say mainstream media to look at and to consider, what's going on behind closed doors, you know, the everyday effects of other things that are happening to us in our life. You know, I think part of the division comes from us not being, us as a people in general, not being as clear-minded and not being as clear-minded and as focused as we could be as people. I believe that is brought on by lots of environmental factors that some are natural, many are man-made. You know, we eat a bunch of GMO foods, you know, those are banned in other countries and things. You know, the use of certain chemicals and pesticides and things that are also banned in other countries, you know, but here in the U.S., you know, our fluoridated water, our polluted waters, look at Flint, Michigan, and all those places, you know, think Aaron Brockovich, you know, weather modification, geoengineering, we talked a little bit about that, you know, chemtrails, all of this stuff, I think, whether it's in its design or not, and I think at least in part it is in its design, but it is making us weaker, more dull, more apathetic, and more simple, you know? Brings us down to a simple, well, I think he's wrong, so he's a son of a bitch. And I don't like him. I don't like any of his kind. And, you know, if they're for it, I'm against it. You know, that kind of thing. We can't be that way, guys. We certainly need to hold fast and strong to our to our own beliefs and our own convictions, okay? Me personally, I believe this should be vetted by God. God should be first, you know. But what I would say to you about it all is pay attention to all sides. Pay attention to what all sides are saying. I mean, really pay attention. Don't just hear the buzzwords and get offended and go off. But hear what they have to say and why they believe what they believe. You know, those others, those that are on the other side of the divide from you, personally, wherever you fall on that. I would encourage you to get your news from not only those mainstream sources, but do it from all sides of it, and then go to the internet and do it from all sides of the fringe or the pseudo information, and, you know, all the stuff that would be considered hacky and conspiracy and not valid. Look at all those sources, as well as look at the ones that are supposed to be valid and sure and truth, you know. And then pray to God for discernment and let God kind of show you how things are, and use that same calm and poise to talk to and deal with those who have differing opinions than you. You know, it's just going to help make the world a better place. This is part of prepping. I mean, you've got to know what's going on in the world, and you've got to understand what's going on in the world. Not only news cycle what's going on in the world, but what's going on with your fellow man, your neighbor, your community. Because if the shit goes down, guys, and sorry for the language, but if it goes down, if it pops off, and I believe it will. I believe we're going to see it. I believe that all this stuff is leading to an ultimate crisis of some sort that we as Americans are going to have to deal with on our own individual level. And then when you go next door and this guy hates you, you know, because you have a different opinion than he does about something, you know, it's not going to do you any good. When the stuff happens, you know, when it all breaks down and you've got to sort of pull from your community, because you're going to have to, guys. I mean, there's there's a small community, a small band of people, I would say, overall, that have their own closed-knitted, hive-minded communities where they'll go out in the woods or their spot or whatever and make camp and live and commune and all that. But for many of us, for the majority of us, we're going to have to deal with one another, okay? And in the situation, you know, like what I'm talking about, if the things pop off and go wrong in the world or, you know, in the country, we're going to have to do it in a state of damn near emergency or straight up emergency. So let's do our best to be informed on all sides and try and understand why people think the way they do and why they believe the way they do and why they make decisions the way they do. Love them, respect them. You don't have to agree with them, okay? Doesn't mean you have to keep your mouth shut either, you know. It just means learn how to cohabitate with them in a way that is loving and that is true, that shows God's love. Pay attention to the news from every angle. You know, open your mind. Don't leave it closed. Just open it. Don't be part of the big divide. Be part of opening up that gap to where you can see broader than this. Okay? That's all I got today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Sorry for all the coughing. Check you next time on The Real World Prepper. Thank you, guys.